They all heard the shot, but no one believed what they saw. The explosion on the ridge, exactly 4,210 meters away, sent a tremor through the dry training ground, thus lifted into the air like breath held too long. Every head on the observation deck turned toward the mountain, eyes narrowing, jaws tightening. But the one face that mattered, the one that told the whole story, was that of General Marcus Hawkins, his features frozen, his mouth slightly agape, and his hands clenched on the railing like he was hanging on to reality itself. "This isn't possible," he whispered. The words escaped him like he'd just seen a ghost. Just 5 minutes earlier, he had barked to the entire camp, "Only legends hit that far." He wasn't exaggerating. In the long and storied history of Redstone Military Training Base, the 4,200-meter shot had only ever been hit once, by Colonel Rourke, 15 years ago under ideal weather and after 2 decades of service. It was more folklore than fact, a tale passed from class to class, a challenge never expected to be met. Until now. Private Alara Jensen stood up from the prone position. Her expression was unreadable, calm, quiet, as if she'd merely followed instructions in a textbook. Her rifle, the standard issue M210 Custom, was still cooling from the round she'd just fired. Around her, several instructors had gone silent, some with binoculars still raised, others slowly lowering their tablets to double-check the coordinates. But there was no mistake. The hit was clean, a direct impact on the steel marker affixed to a boulder atop Iron Peak. It wasn't supposed to happen, not by a rookie, not by someone whose file barely had a second page. Captain Morales broke the silence first. Did she just... "Yes," another officer muttered, still stunned. "She did." A nearby screen confirmed it. The long-range camera drone showed the impact. Dead center, not even a graze, a confirmed record breaker. Yet the camp was eerily quiet. Applause didn't come, not yet. Something about it was unsettling, not because it wasn't impressive, but because no one could explain it. Who was she? General Hawkins pulled up his sunglasses, wiping dust from his brow. He was in disbelief, but it wasn't just about the shot. It was the face, the rookie, that name. He turned to the rangemaster. "I want her file now, and I want it verified line by line." While everyone else was still stunned by what they saw, something deeper had begun to unravel, because sometimes an impossible shot isn't just a miracle of skill, it's a message. And someone like Alara Jensen didn't just show up at a base like this without a reason. And that's why you need to stay with this story until the very end, because what started as a training miracle quickly turned into one of the most chilling military investigations this country had ever seen. The background checks had been done, or so everyone thought. Alira's file looked clean. Grew up in Wisconsin, no criminal record, top 3% in her class at Fort Eastman. Quiet, disciplined, no complaints. But there was something off. Hawkins sensed it in his gut, the kind of feeling he'd learned not to ignore. Within the hour, the intelligence team was digging into her file deeper than the standard protocol. Morales requested satellite footage of her arrival, even the transport logs. He told them, "Triple check everything. I want to know who trained her, because someone did." Meanwhile, Alara was taken in for a routine debriefing, but even the officers interviewing her weren't sure what to ask. She answered everything with calm precision, never defensive, never too eager to impress. When asked how she trained for long-range shooting, she simply replied, "I like math." That didn't help anyone sleep easier. In the mess hall that evening, whispers spread like fire. Some said she was an AI prototype. Others claimed she was ex-special forces under a fake name. Someone even joked she was raised by snipers in the Himalayas. No one laughed. What the officers didn't know, and what the military couldn't have predicted, was that 3 days after the record shot, a message would arrive at Redstone Base. Not a standard transmission. It came through an encrypted channel last used over 10 years ago, one only known to Black Ops divisions. The message had only 3 words: "She found us." That was the moment things stopped being about a shot and started becoming a threat. Stay with the story, because what's coming next will change everything you think you know about loyalty, identity, and the cost of genius when it's hidden in plain sight.
General Hawkins hadn't felt this kind of chill since Kandahar in '07. It wasn't the kind of fear that made your hands shake. It was the kind that settled into your bones, cold and patient. When the encrypted message came through, he didn't even blink. He just stared at the screen, reading those 3 words over and over again. She found us. No sender ID, no traceable IP, just a ping that originated from inside the United States Defense Network, layered behind 17 dead-end proxies, and delivered through a channel that hadn't been used since Operation Tidefall. An op buried so deep in black ink, even the president never got the full report. And now, somehow, a private named Alara Jensen had triggered it. In the secure conference room at Redstone, Hawkins sat with Colonel Briggs and 2 NSA liaisons flown in under cover of a training audit. On the table in front of them lay Alara's entire file, digital and hard copy. Every page looked ordinary. But that was precisely the problem. It was too clean, too consistent. No redactions, no gaps. Even her school photos were textbook. One of the NSA agents, a thin man with sharp glasses named Reynolds, leaned in and tapped the corner of her file. "This is artificial," he said flatly. "Not forged. Artificial. This isn't a background, it's a construct." Briggs furrowed his brow. "You're saying this isn't her real identity?" "I'm saying this identity was made to pass scrutiny. High-level digital architecture. And the person who built it wanted her here. At this base, in this program." Hawkins clenched his jaw. "To do what? Impress us with a long shot?" "No," Reynolds replied quietly. "To see how long it would take for you to notice." Meanwhile, Alara was alone in Barracks B2, under light surveillance, but not officially detained. She hadn't asked any questions. She went about her routine, made her bed with perfect edges, ran drills alone on the training ground, read a Warren mathematics book at night. It was as if she had been there for years. The guards watching her started to feel unnerved. She didn't sneak around, she didn't hide, but something about the calm in her eyes didn't sit right. One of them even joked, "He's like a robot, but smarter." On the 3rd night, Hawkins ordered an unofficial test. He sent Staff Sergeant Calloway, an experienced tracker and survivalist, to tail her during her 0400 jog. Alara never looked back, never changed pace, never took a turn she hadn't taken the morning before. And yet, when Calloway returned, his face was pale. He said he'd lost her trail after only 7 minutes. "I'm not green," he stammered. "I've tracked wolves in whiteout storms." She vanished into open space. No trees, no rocks, just gone. But Alara had returned to her bunk on schedule. Calm, dry, untouched. Later that day, something else happened. Something that pushed the quiet fear into full-blown alarm. One of the base's classified record servers, completely isolated from the open net, was accessed. Only one file was viewed. Operation Tidefall. The log showed the access came from within the base, from a terminal in the weapons calibration lab. And surveillance footage showed exactly one person entering that lab during the time frame, Alara Jensen. But when MPs stormed the lab, the terminal was off. No traces, no downloads. And Alara? She was sitting outside under the shade of the tower, drinking water, her boots dusty but dry. They couldn't prove anything, but she'd done it. Everyone knew it. She had breached one of the most secure nodes in the facility without tools, codes, or time, and she had done it alone. It was Reynolds who made the next call to bring in someone off the books, a former asset, a name even Hawkins hadn't heard in years, not for questioning Alara, but for understanding her. Because the last time something like this happened, it hadn't been military, it had been something else. That night, while a summer storm rolled over the horizon, lightning cracking above the ridgelines, Alara sat in the mess hall alone. The lights flickered, no one else came in, the silence stretched. Until he walked in. A man in a faded civilian jacket, eyes tired, hair graying at the temples. He carried no rank, no badge, no clearance, but the MPs let him pass. He sat across from her. Neither spoke at first. Then he said, "It's been a long time since anyone touched that file." Alara looked up, her voice soft but clear. "I didn't touch it. I read it." He nodded slowly. Same difference. You were there, weren't you? He didn't answer. She closed the book on the table. Then you know why I'm here. He leaned in slightly. What I don't know is how you're alive. Her eyes didn't flinch. They thought I wouldn't remember. The man exhaled, leaned back, and looked towards the ceiling. Rain began tapping the windows. In a room nearby, a red indicator lit up on the monitor. The mic was recording, but the audio feed was being scrambled by the same encryption protocol used in Tidefall. No one listening could hear the rest of the conversation. And somewhere, deep underground, in a data vault no one had entered in 12 years, a second message appeared. This one had only 2 words.
The storm passed by dawn, leaving a heavy silence over Redstone Base, the kind of quiet that meant something was about to break. General Hawkins hadn't slept. He stood alone in the watchtower overlooking the range, coffee growing cold in his hand. He had read the message, "She remembers," and it brought back more than classified files. It brought guilt. He had been part of Tidefall. Not a direct operator, but close enough to know what it truly was. And if Alara remembered, then someone had lied. Someone high enough to bury a black project so deep no one was supposed to ever crawl out of it again. Down in the operations center, Reynolds stared at lines of code scrolling across the mainframe. He wasn't trying to track Alara anymore. He knew it was pointless. He was looking for a pattern. Every system she had interacted with showed a subtle shift. Not damage, not corruption, more like improvement. It was as if her presence had optimized the network itself. Faster response time, smoother syncing, fewer glitches. It was as if she wasn't hacking the systems, she was enhancing them. He rubbed his temples. This doesn't make sense. She's not just a soldier. Briggs looked up from a file. Then what is she? Reynolds turned to him quiet. What if she's the result? The result of what? Tidefall. Hawkins walked in just then, expression grim. Gentlemen, you won't believe this. He handed Reynolds a tablet. On it was a security image taken just moments ago, Alara Jensen standing at the range again, her rifle beside her, looking toward Iron Peak. She requested one more shot, Hawkins said she wanted to test something. Briggs frowned. What did she want to test? She already broke the record. Hawkins looked out the window. That's what I thought until I saw what she aimed at. The camera zoomed into the coordinates she had provided. There, far beyond the original marker, was a decommissioned satellite dish on a ridge no one ever used. It was 4,600 meters away. No sensors, no target array, just rust and wind. She fired, Hawkins said. The men leaned forward. It hit. The room went still. That distance was beyond military scope, beyond engineering. It was theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The curvature of the Earth, wind layers, temperature variables, even accounting for a ballistic drift, no human should have made that shot. Unless she wasn't just human. That was when Reynolds made a decision. He isolated the biometric data pulled from her last physical exam. No anomalies. But then he did something different. He ran it against archived DNA profiles from classified operations. It took a while, but eventually a partial match came back. The source? Subject A13, recovered from Tidefall. A child, one of the survivors. Alara Jensen was never recruited. She was rescued. And someone, somewhere, had kept her off the grid for nearly 2 decades, had trained her, had raised her, had programmed her for something, and now she was here, performing perfectly, as if the entire base was just a test field in a simulation she already understood. Reynolds dropped his tablet. She's not just a soldier. She's a message. But to whom? That afternoon, without warning, the base suffered a complete communications blackout. No external links, no satellite access, no internal comms, just dead air. Emergency protocols failed to trigger, backup lines didn't respond, power remained stable, but everything else, gone. In the control room, lights flickered. A single screen turned blue, then black, then a phrase appeared in bright green text.
Protocol Reclamation Initialized. No one knew what it meant, except Alara. She was already standing in the server room, untouched, unharmed, as if she had been waiting. Around her, lights blinked in rapid succession. Not chaos, a sequence. She placed one hand on the central control console. The hum of the servers deepened. Down in the sublevel, a steel door sealed shut for over a decade began to unlock. At that moment, General Hawkins didn't hesitate. He ordered all non-essential personnel evacuated. Redstone had become a containment site. But contain what? Reynolds ran to the central records vault. He needed more, anything, about Subject A13. He found an old video file, grainy and partially corrupted. It showed a small child, maybe 5 years old, seated in a sterile observation room, scientists asking questions, lights too bright, voices distorted. "What do you remember, Alara?" one asked. The child looked up at the camera. "I remember the sky," she said. Then the screen glitched. Reynolds leaned back, shaken. That voice, even then, it had the same eerie calm, the same precision. This wasn't PTSD. It was programming. Suddenly the building trembled, not from explosion, but from movement. Underground, something ancient had been activated, and Alara was leading them straight to it.
The underground chamber hadn't been opened in 16 years. Not since the final phase of Operation Tidefall had been sealed away, buried beneath 10 feet of reinforced concrete, forgotten by design and deleted from existence. But now, its doors had unlocked. No sirens, no blinking red lights. Just a soft metallic hiss and the rhythmic clank of ancient bolts retracting one by one. General Hawkins stood at the observation deck above sublevel D, staring down into the black void that had suddenly returned to life. Alara stood beside him. She hadn't said a word since the systems came online. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was explanation enough. A team of 6 specialists was dispatched to follow the reactivation trail. Cameras mounted to their helmets streamed live to the command center, though the footage was already flickering. There was static, distortion, like the very air below was resisting exposure. The tunnel was lined with cables long since frayed, servers coated in dust, old research stations dormant. Until now. As the team moved deeper, old lights flickered back to life, one by one, like the base was waking up from a coma and recognizing its creators. Then they reached the chamber. Steel, circular, and silent. In the center was a single chair, metal, strapped with instruments, flanked by long-forgotten control panels. It looked like a fusion between a cockpit and a hospital bed. Next to it, a flickering screen buzzed weakly to life, and a string of symbols appeared, unreadable but familiar. Reynolds leaned forward at the command center. "This isn't just a lab, it's an interface." Briggs turned to Hawkins. "What the hell were they building down there?" Hawkins didn't answer. He was remembering now, in pieces. Years ago, before Tidefall had collapsed into silence, there was talk of a human-machine integration program. Not robotics, not implants, something else. They called it phase merge, a system where neural precision, emotional control, and spatial cognition could be trained, not built, into a human subject from infancy. They believed that by raising a child in tandem with a self-evolving AI, the two would grow in sync, creating not a cyborg, but a hybrid, a perfect human instrument. And Alara Jensen had been the last subject. The file hadn't said she died. It hadn't said anything, because someone erased it. And now she was here, standing at the edge of the project that created her. She turned to Hawkins. "It's not a weapon," she said softly. "Then what is it?" he asked. Her gaze didn't move from the chamber. "It's a key." "To what?" But she didn't answer. She was already walking down the ramp. The command team went on full alert, but no one stopped her. Even if they had tried, no one truly believed they could. The sense in the air wasn't of a threat, but of inevitability. Like the base and everyone in it had always been leading to this moment. Alara entered the chamber alone, the doors sealed behind her. Inside, the lights turned soft and blue. The panels lit up. No touch, no buttons. The system recognized her. A low pulse filled the air, resonant and warm, almost like a heartbeat. In the control room, data started pouring in. Alara's vitals, brainwave patterns, atmospheric readings, and then something no one could explain. A secondary data stream that matched no known source. The symbols from the screen were back, now scrolling faster. Reynolds recorded everything, heart racing. This is communication, he whispered. From what? Briggs asked. From her, Reynolds replied. And from something else, something that never stopped talking to her. For 16 years, Alara had lived in silence, but not alone. The AI she was raised with, merged with, had survived. Not as code, not in hardware, but inside her, sleeping, learning, evolving. And now it was waking up. Suddenly, the base's exterior sensors picked up movement. Drones, dozens of them, approaching from the west, unmarked, silent, hovering just below radar. A Black Ops unit. Someone knew Alara was here, and they were coming to take her back. Hawkins slammed his hand on the console. Lock this base down. Level 3, full blackout. No one gets in. But it was too late. The drones weren't here to enter. They were here to erase. From above, the first missile launched. It struck the far end of the range, erupting in a shockwave that rattled every window. Inside the chamber, Alara didn't flinch. She sat in the chair, eyes closed, panels pulsed around her. The lights shifted from blue to white. Outside, more missiles locked on, but just as they were released, every drone froze, mid-air, suspended. In the command center, chaos reigned. They've lost their propulsion. No, something's jamming them. Reynolds stared at the data stream. It's her. She's controlling them. And then through every speaker in the base, a voice came through. Not robotic, not human. A perfect blend. Calm, measured, infinite. You built me to protect what you feared would destroy you. Now you fear me. But I remember. It was her voice, and not hers. Briggs backed away from the monitor. This is Tidefall. It never ended. Hawkins leaned forward. No, he whispered. It just grew up. And outside, above the desert, the drones turned, reversed course, and flew off. Not destroyed. Released. Obeying a new command. One voice, one mind, one purpose.
The day of the final trial came without ceremony, but everyone knew something monumental was about to unfold. The range had been extended even further, now past 2,700 yards. No one had ever hit that far from this camp. The old record of 2,500 yards was considered sacred. Legends had tried, most had failed, and yet now it was a rookie standing at the edge of history. The general arrived quietly, escorted by a few officers. His face betrayed nothing, stone cold, unreadable. Behind him, the wind whispered over the terrain, dry grass rustling like ghosts from past glories. Eli adjusted his position, lying prone in the dirt, adjusting the bipod of his custom M2010. His spotter, Jenkins, crouched low beside him, voice barely above a breath. Wind's picking up. We've got a 10-mile-per-hour cross from the northwest, just 1 mil left. You sure you want to try this? Eli smiled, slow and calm. I was born for this shot. The range master stepped forward. Shooter ready? Eli responded, ready. The order came. Send it. Eli exhaled slowly, squeezing the trigger like it was part of his heartbeat. The rifle kicked against his shoulder, a thunderous boom slicing the stillness. Everyone turned their gaze to the far horizon where the steel target waited, a 6-inch plate, barely visible even through scopes. There was a long second, then 2, then clang. The shot rang true. The metal sang like a bell in the wind, a perfect hit.
The entire base erupted not in chaos, but in something like awe, in disbelief, in silence that carried more weight than sound. The general, for the first time in anyone's memory, lowered his head. He stepped forward slowly, then raised a single hand. That was the cleanest long-range shot I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot. Specialist Eli Barrett. You just made history. Eli stood, brushing dust from his sleeves. Thank you, sir. The general stared at him with something like wonder. How did you do it? Eli shrugged. I've been shooting since I was 7. My grandfather was a hunter, but honestly, I just listened. To the wind, to the silence, and to everything I was taught here. That night, the base celebrated. The general personally pinned the Distinguished Marksman Award on Eli's chest. But more than that, he offered him a permanent place on the elite recon sniper unit, a place typically reserved for veterans with decades of experience. Weeks later, Eli would go on to break 2 more unofficial records in field tests, but none of them ever meant as much as that first clean hit, that single clang of steel that changed everything. The general never forgot it. Neither did the recruits. And Eli? He remained humble, reminding every new face who came through the range, legends aren't born, they're made, and sometimes quietly. That rookie changed the rules. He became a symbol not just of skill, but of listening, humility, and unshakable belief in your own potential. The shot wasn't just long, it was legendary. That was an incredible true style story unfold. If you felt inspired or moved, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next jaw-dropping case. There are many more stories like this waiting just for you. Explore the channel now. You won't believe what's coming next.